All praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. Double honors to the Apostle Elder Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the hopeful elect of the nation of Israel. The nation of Israel, you so-called blacks, Latinos, Native Americans, Hispanic, and Seminole Indians, alright? And this is a book I have, and I had it for a while. It's called The History of the World in Bite-Sized Chunks by Emma Marriott, alright? And this is this chapter goes into slavery, or the slave trade, or it talks a little bit about the Arab slave trade, because they will say that the Africans sold other Africans into slavery. When you watch documents on YouTube of the actual Hamites or Cushites, alright, the actual heathens that put the Hebrews that were on the west coast of Africa in slavery, alright, they say, no, we don't sell our own people into slavery. So they're sitting there saying that you so-called African Americans are not Africans, alright? And they know that your Hebrew Israelites, either from the tribe of Judah, the tribe of Levi, or the tribe of Benjamin. The tribe of Levi are the so-called Haitians today. The tribe of Benjamin are the so-called Jamaicans, alright? So, that's one thing that they will say, is that no, we didn't sell our own people into slavery. Another reason why I wanted to read this book is so that it can be shown how evil so-called white people, the Edomites, are, and how they try to cover up who we are. Alright? Just look at how, after I read this paragraph in the other page, look and see how they say 1 minute the West Africans were putting, you'll see, not pointing it out. Alright, so like you. Alright, it says the slave trade and abolition, page 113. The transport of slaves from Africa. Oh yeah, and Slaki, but one more thing is that we was on the west coast of Africa because the Lord told us to flee to the mountains when we should see the abomination of desolation coming. And it's talking about the Romans back in 70 AD. Alright? So the Romans, which were so-called white people, y'all came and sacked the temple, not the temple, but Jerusalem. You know, our people had fled before. Some stayed and they got destroyed, or they were put in slavery and so forth. Alright? So that's why you Hebrews were on the west coast of Africa, because you fled west, alright? And it's also documented that we were warring with the Hamites that were in the land, alright, or the Africans that were in the land, alright? The transport of slaves from Africa to the European colonies in the Americas increased dramatically during the 18th century. In the 1780s, it says 90,000 African slaves, but it's more than that. 90,000 African slaves were transported across the Atlantic each year, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, into bondage. And also America is known as Egypt, spiritual Egypt, Babylon, Sodom and Gomorrah. Alright? And by the mid-19th century, an estimated 9.5 million, which is more, Africans have been transported to the New World, representing the largest forced migration in history. The Atlantic slave trade usually followed a triangular system in which ships from Europe sailed to West Africa carrying cotton goods, hardware, and weaponry. The West Africans used these firearms to capture slaves. Okay, so of course our people were on the west coast of Africa, but you still had the actual Hamites, the actual Africans, the actual West Africans that were in the land that we were going to war with. So the white men would go to the actual heathens of the land and have them capture us. But in the midst of that too, you had Israelites that would want to be like the Africans or befriend the Africans, the Hamites of the land, and join to their customs, and they helped take us down, take their own people down. And in the midst of them doing that, they were captured as well for doing that, because they're still Hebrews. It doesn't matter. The Africans said, well, they're still your people. We're going to take you too. All right? Just like how Moses, he knew that he was a Hebrew, but he dwelt amongst the Egyptians, and he slew the Egyptian uh, taskmaster, not master, the taskmaster that was abusing the Hebrew slaves, so-called. Well, not so-called, but, he was abusing the Hebrew, and Moses slew his ass, all right? So, that's what was happening. So, I can turn the page. So that's what was happening, all right? Now I'm going to turn to this other page. For this, but it's important. Were exchanged, so weapons were exchanged for slaves who were taken to the Americas, and the ships then returned to Europe with sugar and other colonial produce. In addition to the 9.5 million slaves transported, around 2 million slaves died in transit. And not only did they die in transit, a lot of them died before they even got on the ships too. A lot of them also, when they said they died in transit, meaning the so-called white man will feed them to sharks. All right, the Atlantic slave trade routes. A lot of the sharks, they follow the same trails today. From the blood, from our blood being soaked in the water, the sharks follow the same trails today. In Europe, awareness of the brutal realities of slavery grew, and in the late 18th century, religious groups in Britain began to campaign for its abolition in 1807. Okay, I want to skip, but it's still important. The chief trading nation, which is Britain, made the trade illegal for British merchants, although the transport of slaves, particularly to America, Brazil, and Cuba, where demand for cotton and sugar was high. Continued and abated West African rulers. Now look at this. It says, West African rulers. Now, they say that we're Africans, right? All right, but now it says the West African rulers whose economies were heavily dependent on slavery were also reluctant to stop capturing and selling slaves. Slavery itself wasn't abolished in the British Empire until 1833. Now, how are we African and we were being sold into slavery by so-called West Africans? How are we African? All right, if we were African, just because they say it's like they put a difference in between West African and African. Like, no, y'all not West Africans, y'all Africans. Well, but how? And we're being look. The majority, the majority of our people were not slaves, of course, but were sold by the Hamites, the Africans, the actual Africans of the land, the ones that's putting the fucking plates in their mouths, the ones that would put the long bamboo sticks on their penis. That's what they do. All right. the ones that put big. I don't want to say bones, but they put the big things in their ear. They act like heathens. They act like savages. Actually, those who are the people that were selling us in slavery, because they know there is a difference in between us and them. Though some of our people were trying to get out of being sold into slavery, so they will sell their brethren. Okay, all right. So that's what it is. You Hamites, you actual Hamites that are not Israelites, because Israel's in every nation. Y'all gonna be slaves in the kingdom. All right, you're gonna pay for that. And I'm gonna read on down to it says the abolishment of slavery in the United States in 1865 during the American Civil War eventually forced Cuba and Brazil to follow suit in 1886, which also the brothers in Cuba and Brazil, not just the so-called blacks, but your Israelites. All right, Cuba is Manasseh, the tribe of Manasseh. All right, Brazil is, I believe, is Asher. No, it's Naphtali. All right, to follow suit in 1886 and 1888. Now, you Arabs, you Arabs, you Ishmaelites, you praise Allah, right? Well, the Allah or Allah, which just means God, Yahweh in the Hebrew, he's only for one nation, and that's his people, which are the Hebrew Israelites. All right, he's not for you. You're not the chosen seed of Abraham. All right, you were cast away. Your foremother Hagar was cast away, and Sarah has said that this handmaid's son should not be heir with my seed. All right. So our foremother Sarah is the free woman, and you Ishmaelites, you Arabs, your mother was a slave. All right, and you despise Isaac, so you're not heir. You're not joined to the blessing of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. All right, you're going to go into slavery as well because you played a major role in the Arab slave trade. You would cut the dicks off of the African, not the African, but the Hebrew man. That's what y'all call us, African. All right, that's what you're doing. You're trying to stop us from populating amongst you Arabs. All right, when y'all took it in slavery. All right, so I'm gonna finish reading this. While this spelled the end of the Atlantic slave trade, Arab, that's what it says. Arab and African merchants still transported slaves. So boom, that's them. That's us catching them in the lie. How are Arab and African merchants wasn't African slaves transported to the Americas? But here they put it different. Arab and African merchants still transported slaves. Why doesn't it say Arab and African merchants still transported African slaves? It just says slaves. All right. I mean, they might not like it's a big deal, but it is. 1 minute, the Africans sold Africans into slavery. Now it's just Arab and African merchants still transported slaves. So who were the slaves? Go back to Deuteronomy 28, 68th chapter. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt. Again, who was in Egypt the first time? He said again, who was in Egypt the first time? The Hebrews. So we're Hebrews. Still transported slaves, Hebrew slaves, to North and East Africa. A practice that didn't finally come to an end until the 20th century. All right? So that's it on that. I'm done. And, I'm just trying to prove a point that we are not Africans, all right? And they know that. They know that we're not Africans, man. All right? We just continue from our heritage. All right? We were going to be called bywords. All right? But the truth is out there that we are the Hebrew Israelites of the Bible, all right? So with that, I'm going to say, call Allah, Yahweh Bashem, Yahweh Shai. Double honors to the Apostle Elder Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the whole elect of the nation of Israel. And only the elect is going to believe this and understand this, all right? because they've been chosen from the foundation of the world. Shalom.